My husband secretly gave $600,000 to his golden new wife to buy a house. You're only good enough for a cleaner job. 2 years later, they're crying. I'll tell you everything. First, let me thank you for watching Grandma Stories. Please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We might give you a shout out in our next video. Today's special shout out goes to Dora Chan from Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you for being part of our family. Now, let me tell you everything. Sometimes the biggest betrayals come from the people who promise to love you forever. I learned this truth while cleaning my husband's office, finding bank papers that would shatter my 40-year marriage. The numbers made my hands shake. $600,000 transferred to someone named Jessica Martinez. My husband David's signature was right there, bold as day. 40 years of marriage, and I'm discovering he gave more money to his secretary than we spent on our entire house. The woman half my age who called me Mrs. Thompson with that fake sweet smile. But David, what about Margaret's cleaning business? I heard through the thin walls of our bedroom. She's 65, honey. She can't expect much more than mopping floors and washing windows. Jessica needs this house for our future together. My heart stopped. Our future. I pressed closer to the door, my cleaning supplies forgotten on the hallway floor. Margaret will be fine with her little cleaning jobs. She's practical. Jessica has dreams, real ambitions. The mop handle slipped from my trembling fingers, clattering against the wall. I backed away from the bedroom door, 40 years of marriage crumbling around me like dust I'd swept up countless times. The hallway felt endless as I grabbed my car keys with shaking hands. I needed air, space, somewhere to think before I confronted the man who'd just thrown away 4 decades like yesterday's newspaper. But luck wasn't on my side today. Margaret, where are you heading? David appeared at the top of the stairs. His reading glasses perched on his nose, looking every bit the successful businessman who'd just given away our life savings to another woman. Just running errands, I managed, my voice barely steady. David descended the stairs, his expensive suit crisp and perfect, probably paid for with money I'd helped earn through years of supporting his career. Is everything all right, dear? You look upset. Everything's perfect, I wanted to scream. Just like your new girlfriend and her shiny new house. Instead, I forced a smile. Everything's fine, David. Just tired from all the cleaning. His face relaxed, probably relieved he wouldn't have to deal with his old wife's emotions today. I made it to my car before the dam burst. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I fumbled with the keys. 40 years of being the perfect wife, supporting his business dreams, raising our children while he climbed the corporate ladder. And this is how he repays me. Margaret! David's voice boomed from the front porch. Come back inside. We need to discuss your schedule. I turned, seeing him silhouetted against our house. The house we built together with MY money too. Why? So you can tell me face to face that I'm only good enough to clean other people's homes while you set up your mistress in luxury. David's confident expression cracked. You were listening at the door. Damn right I was listening. The words felt foreign coming from my mouth. I'd never sworn at David in 40 years. Finally got some honesty in this marriage. David stepped off the porch, his businessman mask slipping. Margaret, please, let's discuss this calmly. Discuss what exactly? How you've been planning my retirement as your maid while buying houses for women young enough to be our daughter. The neighbor's curtains twitched, but I didn't care anymore. If you'd shown half the initiative Jessica has, David's voice turned cold, maybe I'd see you differently. The words hit like physical blows. Initiative. I supported your dreams for 40 years. I gave up on my career, my friends, my life so you could become successful. I cleaned houses to help pay for your business school. The street fell silent except for my voice echoing off the houses. David looked around nervously at our watching neighbors. His reputation more important than his wife's pain. You're making a scene, Margaret. Come inside before you embarrass us both. Embarrass us? I laughed, the sound harsh and unfamiliar. You mean embarrass you? I'm done being embarrassed of who I am, David. I'm done apologizing for not being 25 and blonde. I got into my car, hands steadier now that the truth was out. Through the windshield, I could see him standing there in his perfect suit, probably calculating how much this outburst would cost him. As I drove away, one thought crystallized in my mind. I was going to show him exactly what this 65-year-old cleaning lady could accomplish. I drove straight to my sister Ruth's house, my hands still shaking as I clutched a cup of coffee. Ruth's kitchen had always been my safe haven, filled with family photos and the smell of fresh-baked cookies. Tonight it felt like my only refuge from the wreckage of my marriage. "David called," Ruth said, settling into her chair across from me. "He says you're being unreasonable about some business matter." Business matter. I almost choked on my coffee. Did he mention the part where he gave $600,000 to his secretary? Or how he thinks I should spend my golden years scrubbing toilets while she lives in a mansion? Ruth's coffee cup hit the table hard enough to splash. He did what? A knock at Ruth's front door made us both freeze. Ruth squeezed my shoulder as she went to answer it, her grip surprisingly strong for a woman of 68. I heard David's voice, smooth and persuasive as always. "Ruth, I need to speak with Margaret. This is all a misunderstanding." I set down my cup with enough force to rattle the table. There's nothing to misunderstand about bank transfers and secret phone calls about my future as hired help. David appeared in the doorway, looking smaller somehow without his office power suit. "Margaret, sweetheart, you're upset. Let's go home and talk about this properly." "We're not going anywhere." Ruth's voice cut through his charm like a knife. "And we're not talking about anything until you explain why my sister found out about your girlfriend's house fund by accident." David's face flushed. "Jessica isn't my girlfriend, she's my business partner. The house is an investment. An investment in your midlife crisis." I stood up, finding strength I didn't know I still had. Ruth disappeared into her home office, returning with a thick envelope that made my eyes widen. "Margaret, I've been saving this for the right moment. Seems like today is that day." The envelope contained legal documents and a bank statement showing an account in my name with numbers that made me dizzy. "I've been setting aside money from Mom and Dad's estate," Ruth explained. "You were so busy supporting David's dreams, you never asked about your inheritance. Well, it's been growing interest for 20 years, waiting for you to need it." David went pale. "Ruth, you had no right to keep family financial matters from me." "I had every right." Ruth's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "This money belongs to Margaret, not to your household budget or your girlfriend's house fund." The numbers on the statement blurred through my tears of relief. Freedom. Independence. A chance to prove I was more than just a woman with a mop and bucket. "You can't be serious about this," David whispered, probably calculating how much my independence would cost him in a divorce. After David left, muttering threats about lawyers and family loyalty, Ruth and I sat in silence. The inheritance papers felt heavy in my hands, weighted with possibilities I'd forgotten existed. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" finally asked. "I wanted to see if David would step up on his own," Ruth sighed. "I should have known better. Your husband sees people as either useful or disposable, and he's decided you're disposable." I thought about Jessica, young and ambitious. Everything David thought I used to be before life and marriage wore me down. "What do I do now?" I asked, staring at the bank statement. "Whatever makes you happy." Ruth leaned forward. "But might I suggest starting with that interior design business you dreamed about before you got married?" For the first time since finding those bank papers, I felt something like hope stirring in my chest. Mixed with it was something darker, a determination to show David exactly what his disposable wife could accomplish when she wasn't cleaning up after him. "They'll never forgive you for giving me this independence," I warned Ruth. Ruth's laugh was dry as autumn leaves. "Margaret, at my age, I'm more interested in justice than keeping peace with your cheating husband." She pulled out her laptop. "Now, shall we look at commercial real estate listings? I think it's time Riverside had its first interior design studio run by a woman who knows the value of making a house feel like a home." I smiled, feeling the weight of the bank statement in my hands. It wasn't just money. It was ammunition in a war I'd been losing for 40 years. 3 months into opening Thompson Interior Design, Ruth called with news that made my morning coffee taste bitter. "Jessica's perfect world is falling apart," Ruth said, her voice crackling through the phone. "Seems David's business is under investigation for tax fraud. It's all over the local news." I pulled up the news website on my computer. There was David's company, Thompson Consulting, with federal agents carrying boxes out of the office. The same office where I'd found those bank papers that started this whole mess. "How bad is it?" I asked, surprised to find I felt sad rather than satisfied. Ruth paused. "The house he bought, Jessica. The FBI seized it this morning as evidence. Apparently, the money came from client accounts he was supposed to be managing." My phone buzzed with an incoming call. David's number. I declined it, but it immediately lit up again. "He's been trying to reach you," Ruth said. "Jessica left him yesterday. Took her car and moved back to her mother's place. Your husband's perfect investment just cut her losses." Finally, I answered his call. "Margaret." David's voice was broken, nothing like the confident businessman who dismissed me months ago. "I need your help." "That's interesting," I said, looking around my thriving design studio. "I need you to come back," he continued. "The investigators want to interview you about our joint accounts. I told them you handle the household finances." The familiar anger rose in my throat. Even now, even facing prison, he wanted to use me as his shield. Why would I help the man who called me a maid? "Because I made mistakes," David's voice cracked. "I was stupid, Margaret. I thought Jessica would make me feel young again, but she only wanted the money. You're the only real thing I ever had." His words tumbled out like a confession he should have made months ago. "I never appreciated what you sacrificed for us, for our family, for my dreams." I looked at my appointment book, filled with clients who valued my work, who saw me as more than a convenient household appliance. "And what am I supposed to do with that information now, David?" "The investigators," he continued desperately. "They're offering deals to family members who cooperate. They know you weren't involved in the business fraud, but they need someone to testify about the personal expenses, the unusual transfers. Like the $600,000 he gave to Jessica. You want me to help you avoid prison?" "Yes. I want you to help yourself." His voice was barely a whisper. "The house, our accounts, everything's going to be seized. You need to protect yourself, and I know I don't deserve to ask this, but maybe we can figure this out together." I closed my eyes, remembering all the years I'd believed we were a team. "David, you made your choice when you decided I was only good enough to clean houses while you built a future with someone else." "I was wrong," he said. "I see that now. Margaret, you're the strongest person I know. You built a business in 3 months that's already more honest than anything I accomplished in 30 years. The compliment felt hollow, too late, like flowers on a grave. "I'll testify," I said finally. "Not for you, but for the truth." After we hung up, I sat staring at my reflection in the studio's window. The woman who'd once lived in David's shadow was now someone clients sought out for advice and expertise. My phone lit up with a text from our daughter. "Dad called. Says you're helping with the legal troubles. Mom, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself." "Finally," I typed back. "Standing up for what's right. There's a difference." Just like Ruth had taught me, sometimes the right choice isn't the easy choice. The day of David's sentencing, I received 2 pieces of mail that felt like poetry from the universe. First, a letter confirming my interior design certification. Official recognition that I was more than just a woman with cleaning supplies. Second, a notice that David had been sentenced to 2 years in federal prison for tax fraud and embezzlement. I stared at both letters on my kitchen table, wondering if this was karma's way of balancing the scales after 40 years of being undervalued. My phone rang, David calling from the courthouse. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Margaret," he said, his voice hollow with defeat. I know I don't deserve this, but could you visit me sometimes? In prison, I mean. I don't have anyone else now. I looked around my kitchen, our kitchen. That would soon be mine alone. I have a business to run, David. Clients who depend on me, projects with deadlines. You know, the kind of work you never thought I was capable of. The silence stretched between us like the years of dismissal and neglect. I was wrong about everything, he finally said. About you, about what you could do, about what really mattered. You've built something beautiful, Margaret. Something honest. I watched cars pass by our house. My house now. Carrying people to jobs and dreams and futures they were building for themselves. David, you're facing prison time. And I'm facing the first chapter of my life where I get to choose what I want to be. Maybe this is exactly what we both needed. There was no bitterness in my voice. Just acceptance of a truth 40 years in the making. After I hung up, I walked through the house David and I had shared for 2 decades. The rooms felt different now. Not empty but spacious. Full of possibilities instead of his expectations. I opened my laptop and began designing the renovation plans. If I was going to live here alone, it would reflect who I was becoming, not who I used to be. The master bedroom would become my design office. The formal dining room would showcase my portfolio. This house would be my studio, my sanctuary, my proof that reinvention was possible at any age. A knock at the door interrupted my planning. Jessica stood on my porch, looking nothing like the confident secretary who'd once called me Mrs. Thompson with that patronizing smile. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by jeans and a simple sweater. I know I don't have the right to be here, she began. But I needed to apologize. I left the door open but returned to my laptop. You have nothing to apologize to me for, Jessica. You didn't know I existed when David was buying you houses. She stepped inside, closing the door softly behind her. That's not true, Jessica said, her voice small. I knew about you. I knew he was married. I told myself it didn't matter because he said you were just roommates. That your marriage was over in everything but paperwork. She picked up one of my design portfolios from the coffee table, flipping through pages of room transformations and color schemes. He was wrong about you, she whispered. You're not just some housewife who couldn't do anything else. You're talented. Really talented. I looked up from my computer. Why are you telling me this, Jessica? Because I got a job at a real estate office, she said, setting down my portfolio carefully. Nothing special, just showing houses and filing paperwork. But it's honest work, and I wanted you to know that I understand now what it means to earn something yourself instead of having it handed to you. She moved toward the door. I also wanted you to know that David called me yesterday. He asked if I'd wait for him to get out of prison. My fingers paused over the keyboard. And what did you tell him? I told him the same thing I'm telling you, Jessica said, her hand on the doorknob. I'm done being what other people want me to be. I'm going to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be someone's prize or someone's mistake. After she left, I sat staring at my renovation plans. Maybe revenge wasn't about watching other people fall. Maybe it was about rising so high that their opinion of you became irrelevant. My phone buzzed with an email from a potential client who'd seen my work featured in the local magazine. I opened the message, smiling at the project details. A complete home makeover for a family celebrating their 25th anniversary. They wanted something that honored their past while embracing their future. Exactly the kind of challenge I dreamed of tackling when I was young and full of ambition. Before David convinced me that dreams were impractical for wives and mothers. Before I learned to make myself smaller so he could feel bigger. Those days were over, buried under years of personal growth that prison would never interrupt. 6 months later, I stood outside the county detention center, watching David shuffle toward me in his orange jumpsuit. Prison had aged him in ways that 40 years of marriage hadn't. His confident businessman stride was gone, replaced by the careful steps of someone learning humility the hard way. Margaret, he said, sliding into the plastic chair across from me. You came. I studied this man I'd shared my life with, seeing him clearly for maybe the first time ever. I said I would. The visiting room buzzed with other families reconnecting across the divide of mistakes and consequences. "How's the business?" David asked, his voice careful, probably afraid of the answer. I pulled out my phone, showing him photos of my latest project, a Victorian restoration that had been featured in 3 design magazines. "Booked solid through next year," I said. "Turns out people value quality work and honest pricing." He stared at the photos, his face cycling through emotions I couldn't name. "I never saw this in you," he admitted. "I thought I knew who you were, but I never really looked, did I?" The question hung between us like 40 years of missed opportunities. "You saw what you needed to see," I said, not unkindly. "A woman who would support your dreams and not ask for dreams of her own." David nodded, understanding finally sinking in. I wasted so much time trying to find something exciting outside our marriage when the most interesting person I knew was sitting across the breakfast table every morning. I thought about all those mornings, how I'd made his coffee and asked about his meetings while my own ambitions gathered dust in the corners of our kitchen conversations. "The house sold last week," I told him, watching his face carefully. "I'm moving into a condo downtown, closer to my studio." David's shoulders sagged. "Our house. But we had so many memories there." "We had your memories there," I corrected gently. "Every room was decorated to your taste. Every decision made around your comfort, your career, your needs. The condo is mine. Every paint color, every piece of furniture, every corner designed by me, for me." A timer buzzed somewhere in the visiting room, the signal that our hour was almost up. "Margaret," David reached across the table, not quite touching my hands. "When I get out, could we try again? Not the old way, but as equals. I see who you really are now, and I want to be worthy of that person." I looked at this broken man who'd once made me feel worthless, wondering if people could really change or if prison was just another performance. "David, I spent 40 years trying to be worthy of your love. I'm not interested in teaching you how to be worthy of mine." The guard called time, chairs scraping against linoleum as visits ended around us. I stood up, gathering my purse and car keys. "But," I added, seeing something genuine in his eyes for the first time, "when you get out, if you want to know who you are without someone else's money or dreams or expectations to lean on, call me. Not because I'll take you back, but because I understand what it's like to discover yourself later in life." David nodded, tears tracking down his cheeks. "I love you, Margaret. The real you, not the version I tried to make you into." "I know," I said. "That's why this hurts so much." Walking back to my car, I felt lighter than I had in months. The conversation I dreaded had become something else entirely. Not reconciliation, but resolution. My phone buzzed with a text from Ruth. "How did it go?" I typed back. "Better than expected. Some endings are actually beginnings." The drive back to the city gave me time to think about the client meeting I had scheduled for that afternoon. A young couple, both working multiple jobs to afford their first home. They reminded me of who David and I used to be, back when we were building something together instead of tearing each other down. That evening, I sat in my new condo, surrounded by fabric samples and paint chips for tomorrow's consultation. The space was small compared to the house David and I had shared, but every inch belonged to me. No compromises, no negotiations, no settling for his version of practical. My phone rang, our daughter calling from college. "Mom, Dad told me you visited him today. How are you doing with everything?" I looked around my condo, at the business I'd built, at the life I'd created from the ashes of a 40-year mistake. "I'm doing something I haven't done in 40 years, I told her. "I'm living for myself instead of around someone else's needs." Our daughter was quiet for a moment. "I'm proud of you, Mom. Growing up, I always worried you'd lost yourself in taking care of Dad and us kids. Seeing you start over at 65. It's inspiring." After we hung up, I opened my laptop to work on a presentation for a commercial project, a law firm that wanted their offices to feel welcoming rather than intimidating. The irony wasn't lost on me. They valued my opinion on creating comfort in a profession built on conflict. The business had grown beyond anything I'd imagined when I took Ruth's inheritance and rented my first studio space. What started as proof that I was more than David's dismissed wife had become something larger. Evidence that reinvention was possible at any age, that talent didn't expire just because society said it should. My appointment book was full, my bank account was healthy, and for the first time in decades, I woke up excited about what each day might bring instead of dreading another round of making myself small to accommodate someone else's ego. A year passed before I saw David again. He looked different in civilian clothes. Smaller somehow, uncertain in a way that Prison Orange had masked. We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory that belonged to neither of our old lives. "You look good, Margaret," he said, settling into the chair across from me. Happy. I was happy, I realized. Not the desperate happiness of someone trying to convince themselves everything was fine, but the quiet satisfaction of a life lived on purpose. "Thank you. How are you adjusting to being out?" "It's harder than I expected," David admitted, stirring sugar into his coffee with shaky hands. "Not the practical stuff, finding a job, learning to use a smartphone that's 5 years newer than when I went in. It's the realizing that I spent 67 years of my life being someone I didn't even like." He looked out the window at people walking past with purpose, carrying portfolios and coffee cups, and the comfortable confidence of people who knew where they belonged. "I got a job at a non-profit," he continued. "Financial planning for seniors who've been scammed out of their savings." "That's good work," I said, meaning it. David nodded. "Penance, maybe. Or just finally using what I know to help people instead of taking advantage of them." He met my eyes. "I see how you look at me now, Margaret. Like you're looking at a stranger. I suppose I am a stranger, even to myself." A text buzzed on my phone. A client confirming tomorrow's final walkthrough of their kitchen renovation. Real work, real satisfaction, a real life I'd built one careful decision at a time. "We're both strangers," I said. "The people we used to be don't exist anymore." "Do you think," David asked carefully, "that these new people we've become could be friends? Not married, not trying to fix what we broke, just friends who understand each other's mistakes." I considered this man who'd dismissed me for 40 years, who'd given another woman the financial security he'd assumed I didn't need or want. Prison had broken something in him, but maybe it had also cleared away the arrogance that made him think he could treat people like furniture to be rearranged according to his comfort. "I think," I said slowly, "that we could try being friendly. With boundaries." David smiled. Not his old politician's smile, but something genuine and grateful. "I'd like that. And Margaret, I want you to know that seeing what you've built, how you've thrived without me, it's the first thing that's made me proud in years. Not proud of myself, but proud to have been married to someone so strong, even if I was too stupid to see it at the time." The words would have meant everything to me 2 years ago. Now they felt like validation I no longer needed, acknowledgement from someone whose opinion had lost its power to define me. We finished our coffee in comfortable silence, two people who'd shared a lifetime but were no longer sharing a future. As we prepared to leave, David pulled out his wallet and left a generous tip, a small gesture that showed he'd learned something about recognizing service and treating workers with respect. "Can I ask you something?" he said as we stood up. "What was the moment you knew you were going to be okay? When did you stop being my ex-wife and start being Margaret Thompson, interior designer?" I thought about it as we walked toward the door. The first time a client called me by my professional name instead of calling me David Thompson's wife, I said. When I realized my reputation was my own, built on my work, my integrity, my vision. We stepped outside into the afternoon sunshine, the city bustling around us with the energy of people pursuing their dreams. That's when I knew I wasn't just surviving what you did to our marriage. I was thriving because of who I chose to become afterward. David nodded, understanding passing between us like a gift neither of us expected to give or receive. "Take care of yourself, David," I said and meant it. Not the automatic pleasantry of a woman trained to smooth over awkward moments, but the genuine wish of someone who'd found peace with their past. He smiled, looking more like the young man I'd married 43 years ago than he had in decades. Take care of yourself too, Margaret. And thank you. For what? For showing me what grace looks like when someone you love becomes someone you don't recognize. You could have destroyed me during the trial. Instead, you told the truth and let the consequences speak for themselves. I walked back to my car, feeling the weight of closure settling around my shoulders like a comfortable coat. The conversation I'd been avoiding for 2 years had become exactly what I needed. Not reconciliation, but recognition that we'd both survived the wreckage of our marriage and found ways to build new lives from the debris. My phone buzzed with a message from a potential new client who'd seen my work featured in a national design magazine. The project was across the country, a complete corporate office renovation that would challenge every skill I'd developed. That night, I sat in my condo reviewing the project details, calculating costs and timelines and logistics. 2 years ago, I would have dismissed the opportunity as too ambitious, too risky, too far outside my comfort zone. 2 years ago, I was a woman who cleaned houses because someone told her that was all she was good for. Now I was a businesswoman with a reputation, skills, and the confidence to take on challenges that would have terrified my former self. The scared woman who'd found those bank papers had become someone I barely recognized, and I liked her. I opened my laptop and began drafting a proposal for the cross-country project. Win or lose, the fact that I was even considering it showed how far I'd traveled from the woman who'd once believed her husband's assessment of her worth. My reflection in the laptop screen showed a face I was still getting used to. Confident, focused, belonging to someone who made her own decisions and lived with the consequences. The scared woman who'd eavesdropped on conversations about her own irrelevance had become someone whose opinion was sought, whose expertise was valued, whose future was entirely her own to design. Ruth called as I was putting the finishing touches on my proposal. "How did Coffee with David go?" she asked, her voice warm with concern and curiosity. "Better than expected," I said. "Different than I hoped, but exactly what we both needed." Ruth chuckled. "You know, watching you rebuild your life has been the most inspiring thing I've seen in my 70 years. You've shown me that it's never too late to become who you were meant to be." I looked around my condo. Every piece of furniture chosen by me, every color reflecting my taste, every corner arranged for my comfort and productivity. "I'm thinking about taking a project in California," I told Ruth. 6 months, maybe a year of work. It would mean leaving everything I've built here. Ruth was quiet for a moment. "Margaret, 2 years ago you were afraid to leave the house without David's permission. Now you're considering crossing the country for work. What do you think that means?" I knew what it meant. It meant the scared woman who'd discovered her husband's betrayal had become someone who could face any challenge, go anywhere, build anything. It meant I'd finally learned the difference between being practical and being afraid. After we hung up, I walked to my window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, David was probably sitting in his small apartment, adjusting to a life without the power and prestige he'd spent decades accumulating. Somewhere else, Jessica was probably showing houses to young couples, building an honest career from the ground up. And here I was, 67 years old, considering the biggest professional opportunity of my life. None of us were the people we'd been 2 years ago. Some endings really were beginnings, and some failures cleared the path for unexpected success. I opened my email and sent the proposal to the California firm, then poured myself a glass of wine to celebrate the courage it took to dream big at an age when society expected me to dream small. The wine tasted like freedom, like possibility, like the first sip of a life I'd designed entirely for myself. Tomorrow I'd call Ruth and tell her I was taking the California job. Tonight, I'd sit in my condo and marvel at the journey from dismissed wife to respected professional, from cleaning other people's messes to creating beauty in spaces that had forgotten how to shine. My phone buzzed with an immediate response from the California firm. They wanted to schedule a video call for tomorrow morning to discuss the project timeline. I stared at the message, heart racing with excitement I hadn't felt since I was young, and the world seemed full of endless possibilities. This wasn't just a job opportunity. It was proof that reinvention wasn't just about surviving what others did to you, but about discovering what you could do for yourself. I raised my wine glass to my reflection in the dark window. Here's to the woman I used to be, and to the woman I'm still becoming. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of the renovated corporate headquarters in San Francisco, watching employees walk through spaces I'd designed from scratch. The transformation was complete. What had been cold, intimidating offices were now warm, collaborative spaces that encouraged creativity and connection. My phone rang with calls from 3 potential clients who'd seen articles about the project in design magazines. At 67, I wasn't winding down my career. I was hitting my stride, finally understanding that expertise and wisdom were gifts that got better with age, not worse. The flight home to announce my next project. A chain of senior living facilities that wanted to revolutionize how society thought about aging and independence. The irony was perfect. The woman once dismissed as only good enough to clean houses was now designing spaces that would redefine dignity for thousands of seniors. My seatmate, a young woman heading home from her first job interview, asked about my work. I design spaces that honor people's stories, I told her. I help them see that their best chapters might still be unwritten. She smiled, probably thinking I was talking about other people, not knowing I was describing my own journey. As the plane descended toward home, I thought about David in his small apartment, working at his nonprofit, probably learning what it meant to serve others instead of being served. I thought about Jessica, building her real estate career one honest transaction at a time. And I thought about myself, no longer defined by what others expected of me but by what I expected of myself. The scared woman who'd eavesdropped on her husband's plans had become someone whose own plans were featured in magazines, whose vision shaped spaces where real people lived and worked and dreamed. The taxi pulled up to my condo building as the sun was setting, painting the windows gold with reflected light. I looked up at my window, knowing that behind it waited sketches for the senior living project, fabric samples for a restaurant renovation, and a calendar packed with consultations for people who valued what I brought to their spaces. This was what success looked like at 67. Not the desperate scramble to prove worth to someone who'd already decided you were worthless, but the quiet confidence of someone who'd learned to value herself correctly and found that others followed suit. Ruth was waiting in my lobby, arms full of mail and wearing a smile that lit up her entire face. "How was California?" she asked as we rode the elevator up. "Life-changing," I said, and meant it in ways that went far beyond professional accomplishment. I got the senior living contract. 6 facilities, 18 months of work, and complete creative control. Ruth hugged me tight, and for a moment I was overwhelmed by gratitude, not just for her support, but for the journey that had led me from cleaning supplies to design awards, from dismissed wife to sought-after professional. That night, I spread the senior living project plans across my dining table, designing spaces where people my age would live with dignity, independence, and beauty. Each room I sketched was a small rebellion against every assumption about what women like me were capable of achieving. The phone rang. Another potential client, another opportunity to prove that talent had no expiration date, that dreams deferred weren't dreams denied. I answered with confidence, ready to transform their vision into reality, knowing that the best revenge against those who underestimate you isn't proving them wrong, it's proving yourself right.